Hello, welcome to Friday I'm in Bed.
Podcast for midlife women living their best life, but in bed by 10. This week on Friday I'm in Bed, we're starting with Andy Burnham and his very different approach to political communication. He's been putting himself all over social media, from TikTok to Instagram, and there's been a little bit of a backlash from people asking whether a prime minister really needs to be making videos about pubs, football and everyday life. Is he genuinely connecting with people or trying a little too hard to be the bloke next door? But with overall turnout at the 2024 election only around 60% and younger voters among the groups least likely to vote, is social media actually one of the best ways to get politics in front of people who might otherwise switch off?
Then we're talking about something we absolutely love, women in their 50s and 60s rediscovering their libido. We've got one woman whose first holiday fling in her 60s made her feel visible and desirable again, and another whose completely legitimate crush on Richard Ashcroft reignited something she thought had disappeared for good. We're chatting about desire, confidence, menopause, and why women's sexuality seems to disappear from the conversation as we get older, and whether sometimes all it takes is a man on a stage to remind you that you're still alive. So grab a cuppa and let's get into it. Welcome to our weekly chance to complain about really petty, pointless things that have been irritating us, probably for no reason at all. So, Kate, what's been annoying you this week?
This isn't a new annoyance. This is just a general annoyance, which was triggered in my brain from your moaning last week when you talked about people that didn't press buttons when they're crossing the road. So this is about kind of passive aggressive pressing of buttons when I've already pressed the goddamn button. So particularly at lifts. So I'm at the lift, I've pressed the button. Everyone can see I've pressed the button. The button is shining red. It's visibly pressed. And there's always one, and I hate to say it, it's always a man that comes and presses it too, as if to say, have you really pressed it? Do you need a man to press it? You know, that kind of, have you done it right? Maybe you didn't. Maybe the lift's not coming. I need to press the button. And I just think, back off the button. I told you it was random.
Okay. I don't know where to go. I don't even know where to go with this one because...
Don't tell me you're a person that presses the button after it's been pressed, even though it's red.
I'm going to allow it.
Ooh.
I am, just because it obviously really annoys you. And there are people, you know, those people do exist. I don't think it's all people who press the button. I think some people are just a bit like, you know, sometimes you believe like if you press it again, it will know there's 3 people waiting and think it better hurry up. Like, you know, so I don't think it's all people. But there are definitely those people who are a bit like, I can see that button's been pressed, but I'm not entirely sure you did it properly, and that's why the lift isn't here. Or, you know, that kind of, they kind of look at it and then they're like, oh, I'll just give it a bit of a like. Yeah, I'm allowing it, but only for the people who are actually pressing the button because they're idiots.
It's annoying.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that, you know, people who are just innocently pressing the button because you're not just like seething silently at them.
No, it's the people that know the button has been
specifically
pressed.
The ones that do that little and then kind of look at you and then just like give it a little jab.
Yeah, it's like
those ones.
Me to do
those
the
ones
pressing.
Are allowed.
Okay. What about you? What's been annoying you this week?
Okay, well, again, annoying me always, but I think. Well, I think we should both probably just stay at home. But I mean, I just started to say what mine is and then realise it could really just be like boiled down to just people being around. But what I was going to say is people who walk slowly, like chatting along the pavement at like 2 abreast on a narrow pavement with absolutely like zero awareness that there's other people around them that might be trying to get somewhere. And this applies in all scenarios. And then my brain hopped onto, you know, and then these are the same people that walk out of a shop and then stop like in the doorway.
I'm with you. And they're the same people that don't walk in a straight line. They walk diagonally. So you're walking. You might be beside me, you might be behind me, you might be in front. We're all walking, and then suddenly somebody walks at an angle in front of me. And it's like, no, just stop, wait, pause, turn. Yeah. I drive me crazy.
You know, or at least just have some awareness of other people's trajectories at the time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the particularly walking side by side, having your lovely chat, while other people are trying to get on with their business.
I'm letting this in because it infuriates me. It infuriates me in every way. And even just, well, it's probably a next one. You know, we all know in London, you stand on the right on the escalator and you can run on the left. We all know it. But there'll be people standing. And of course, there are some people that don't know. But, you know, just people. Maybe we should just stay in, yeah.
Okay. This week's moaning, Jem and Kate should just stay at home.
Well, we're about to embark on our 5th, is it, heat wave of the summer? I don't know if it's 4th or 5th. I'm losing track. And I know you're not great in this heat. How are you, Jem? Are you surviving?
I'm okay. I've got my air conditioning and I've got a this where I record is nice and shady. It's a box park, but we're underneath a flyover, so I'm all right at the moment. We're going away in the van tonight, so that'll be nice to see if we can see meteors.
Yes. It's all about the sun and the sky and the stuff.
Yeah,
nice.
But it's been an eventful week because we suddenly, after last week's, we got asked to take two foster dogs, which we weren't expecting to happen so quickly. But so after last week's episode, we had to shoot up to Lincolnshire to pick up 2 rescue pugs that we're offering a little bit of respite. So there's 3 of them here now, which was a little bit unexpected, but it's been interesting. And I went to see Beetlejuice at the weekend.
I did see stripy clothing on your stories. Yes. Did you have fun?
I did. I had lots of fun. It's really good. Would very much recommend Beetlejuice. It was a really good show. Yeah. Have you been up to anything exciting?
Turned 54.
Yes, you did.
I did. I had my birthday and my wedding anniversary because we got married on my 40th birthday. So my wedding anniversary is the same as my birthday. So yes, we went for a picnic. So we got married in a watermill in Burnham, local to us, where there's a big meadow and a river and it's all lovely. We go there every anniversary. We try to. So we went and had a picnic there. And then we went to a gig, and then we went to Bury St Edmunds to see my dad because it was his birthday. So it's been a really nice week, but it's almost like the calm before the storm because tomorrow is results day and next week is results day too. So it's all like, that's come round quick. I feel like it was only a minute ago since I was sitting on this podcast talking about GCSE.
Yeah.
A-level results are tomorrow, so I've got that's my son, and then GCSE results are next week. So it's all just like,
wow, good luck. Good luck. How exciting.
So yeah, so that's all exciting.
I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
I know. I've just dug out a photograph of me in the 6th form because I'm going to do a post tomorrow around results and around, basically aimed at my son and his friends, but just about how, like, whatever happens, like, life turns out the way it turns out, and I found this photograph of me. So watch out for this photograph. I look goddamn awful. I've got all my hair shaved except a little bit on the top. And I don't think I've got any makeup on, and I'm wearing, well, just wait. I'm not sure if I want to put this photo online, but hey, they're getting the results. I'll put my photo of me looking odd.
Well, as ever, we've got lots to talk about. So I guess we should crack on and talk about the important issues of the week.
Yes.
Right. So we're going to start off today talking about Andy Burnham. So just in case you've been living under a rock for the last few weeks, he is our new Prime Minister, which is funny because he became Prime Minister on the 20th of July, and actually I was living under a rock and kind of didn't realise it had happened for the first few days because there was a lot going on around that time in my life. But yes, I am now aware that we have a new Prime Minister.
Gemma.
I know. I'm so up to date with the news. So he's been in the job under a month. So 3-ish weeks. And he seems to have spent a good chunk of that time on social media. So The Guardian is calling him the UK's first TikTok PM. And there's comparisons to Zohan Mondani, the New York mayor. In his first week, Andy Burnham's TikTok following jumped by 73%, and searches for his name on TikTok went up by 2,000% in a single day. So he's been posting day in the life videos. He went for a jog with Mo Farah for Mo Farah's YouTube series. I think I'd be too scared to go for a jog with Mo Farah. I think it would be like a brisk walk for him. He turned up on the viral Career Ladder series with a Ukrainian creator, Max Klemenko, who's got more than 9 million TikTok followers. So it's been talked about a lot then in the press. Like I say, The Guardian did a feature referring to him as the UK's first TikTok PM. And it's brought up kind of a lot of questions. He seems to be using it quite well, obviously, at the moment. I mean, we've had some cringe people in the past. People got a bit cringy about Ed Davey and stuff. But he seems to be actually using it okay. But do we want our politicians to behave like influencers? I think is kind of the ultimate question that people are kind of asking. So I think there's kind of two sides to it. There's, yes, this is fine. Actually, a lot of people don't get their political information from the newspapers and TV the way that they used to. TikTok and Instagram, they're just another form of communication. So if politicians want people to understand what they're doing, they have to go to where the people actually are. That's all people, but particularly, younger people who really aren't using TV and newspapers at all. It makes politicians feel more human, more accessible, makes politics less alienating. And I mean, that's all good stuff. However, also we have the very nature of the communication from social media platforms like TikTok being so short form and has to be straight to the point. Are we potentially rewarding just performance over actual substance? Should we be deciding on elections over who can create an entertaining TikTok video best rather than, actual policies? The algorithm obviously rewards personality, outrage, and kind of simple, constant content. And again, are we then essentially letting the algorithm decide our elections for us? When we choose a politician, should we be choosing them because we think we might quite like to go for a pint with them, or because we think they would actually be a good politician? You don't have to be entertaining to be a good politician. You can be incredibly boring, be a good politician, apparently. I don't know. I would be a terrible politician. I think we can all agree on that. There's that argument around authenticity as well, which is kind of increasingly people are getting the algorithms rewarding authenticity that more. But can you buy authenticity with a good social media team who are just kind of there, and then are we then rewarding politicians who can afford to pay a team that understand social media, a decent social media team? So there's an awful lot going on, I think. What happens when governing gets difficult? One day you're posting little dancey TikTok videos. Do they still do TikTok dances?
No.
Or is that gone? Okay, whatever. One day you're doing that. The next day there's a terror attack or a stock market crash or something. How do you have those two pieces of content sitting alongside each other on social media? So yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would like to unpack today. So I'm going to start with, do you follow any politicians on social media? Andy Burnham, any of the others?
I do, yes. And I think it's worth saying before I forget, because it's very easy for me to forget, is that there's a lot of talk about Andy Burnham, but Zach Polanski and in fact, Hannah, the plumber, a lot of their communication strategy was via social media. And let's not forget Farage and co all use social media. So it's not actually just Andy. I actually think he's doing it very well, which is why people are like, oh, obviously he's our prime minister too. I get that. But he started when he was going for the mayor, not the mayor, the MP role at Makerfield. So that's when he really upped his usage. So it was before he became PM. But I think he's doing it, personally, I think he's doing it very well, because right now he has a good mix of this is who I am, but also this is what matters to me and this is what I'm going to be focusing on. So he's got that nice balance currently. So to answer your question, I do follow him. I followed him for years, but I also follow Hannah the plumber, and I for example, so I do follow others who are equally doing a very good job on social media. What's interesting, you mentioned about Ed Davey, wasn't he going like in a water park, or didn't he do something on a water slide?
He went down a water slide,
and it was really cringy because it was like, I think he hadn't done anything like that before, and it was it was off brand. So when I put my marketing hat on, like who advised him that going down a water park was going to make him seem like one of us, whereas whoever advised Andy Burnham to rate his favourite albums from the 90s actually made him feel like one of us. So it's, as you said about the social media teams, obviously it's a lot of this comes down to who they're actually paying to create their marketing strategies, but they all should have a marketing strategy, all of them, including people from the other parties.
Well, let's There's been comparisons with Farage's use of social media because obviously Farage has lots of followers. I did have some comparisons of their stats. So Farage has 2.3 million followers on X, the cesspool that is X, as I call it in my head, 1.5 million TikTok followers and 1 million Instagram followers. So Andy Burnham currently has 730,000 on X, 450,000 on TikTok, and 600,000 on Instagram. So he's not quite at Nigel Farage's figures yet. However, it's the massive jump in his figures over the last few weeks that have been really interesting. So following up 73% on TikTok. The Guardian, that's from The Guardian. It was reported elsewhere as roughly 99,000 to 392,000, which is near like 300%. So there's different figures everywhere, but his following jumped sharply. Yeah. So he is taking on Farage at his own social media game. He's had over 2 million views on the one where he announced a £2 bus fare cap.
Yeah.
I believe he worked with a creator called The Bus Auntie, who I do not follow, but you probably know because you know all these people. No. And then he had 4.7 million views on the ones where he announced a 20% up to pub business rates. So he's getting some good views.
Yeah, I think it's coming across, whether you're a supporter of his party or not. I believe it's coming across really authentic. It just reminded me as well of Rishi Sunak. Remember, he did that campaign. I don't know what it was for, but he decided to fill up a car of petrol and it was all photographed. And it wasn't clearly not his car. And then he went and paid and he didn't seem to know how to use Apple Pay.
He was like, how do we do money?
How do we do money? And it's like, whereas actually, actually, one of the ones we could maybe discuss, and Kemi Badenoch, and so he then made a video of his blue t-shirt and his lashes. And again, so that's the sort of thing that is unheard of. It's not that this is who I am, I'm the guy next door, or I'm the guy that cares about this, or, like all that kind of stuff, which we've seen before. It was the using social to kind of retaliate in a jokey way. I think that's the bit that people are like, oh my God, he's now fluttering his eyelashes, because she's made a big point of saying he's just a pair of eyelashes. You could argue why she even saying that in the first place, because, if he said something like that, it would be outrageous. But I just kind of chuckle. But then, of course, a lot of people would think that wasn't funny. It's not right. It's not professional.
Well, see, these are some of the things that I got here. There was a few things you said in there to like unpack a little bit. Is that one of the things is social media making us expect everyone to be entertaining? Like, do politicians need to be entertaining? Should they just be busy doing whatever politicians do? Like, but are we also expanding that to like doctors? Doctors have to be entertaining now. We have to. Doctors on TikTok and Instagram, and lawyers and scientists, historians, everyone. And it has to be entertaining. I mean,
they are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. I know. I mean, I watch a lot of them. I love Professor Poutine's histories. I love him. He's a Canadian guy who does a lot of kind of political and history kind of stuff. And I love it. Here for it all. But should that be the way that we choose politicians? Is that they're entertaining?
One would like to think we choose politicians on their policies. And I think to answer something you said right at the beginning was about how can you have, a blokey, I'm a fan of the Smiths, next to discussing, a big thing that's happening in the world, big serious thing, war, or whatever. I think you can, and I think he will. I just think, look at Zelensky, for example. He was a comedian. His entire career was obviously making people laugh, and now when the war started, it was I think there was a bit of a feeling of like, how is he going to handle this? But he is on the world stage. Everyone's forgotten he was a comedian. So I think when the big stuff happens, one would expect them to step up. But to answer your thing about do people need to be entertaining, I think you even said it yourself. One of the big things about marketing is you have to meet people where they're at. And the biggest mistake people make and businesses make is they don't. They just create content and hope somebody sees it. But you have to go to where, and that content could be a newspaper article or a speech or whatever. The biggest mistake is they don't realize they have to go to where people are, and people are on social media. That's where we are.
Yeah, I see. But this is one of the other kind of questions about it, is that we all know, right, that social media can become our echo chamber, that we see what we want to see, and we see things that reinforce our views. So the more we watch things, the more we see these things. And that this kind of use of social media to respond to other politicians, like you were saying about him responding to Kemi Badenoch, it means that they don't get pushback, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So they can, there's little scrutiny outside of their little bubble. So like, rather than, there's no guaranteed right of reply to their opponents, you know. So Kemi Badenoch criticizes him. He puts out a TikTok with a blue t-shirt and fluttery eyelashes, you know. But she could come and leave a comment underneath it, you know, but there's not, I mean, this is all like, ah ha ha. So people who like Andy Burnham are like, ah ha ha, look how brilliant Andy Burnham is. We laughing at Kemi Badenoch. Whereas Kemi Badenoch may put something out and everyone will be like, ha ha ha, look, Andy Burnham. Everyone's laughing at Andy Burnham. So there's no kind of, no one gets cross-examined. Everyone's just broadcasting to their own
But
people.
they would be cross-examined. They do have question time, as in, you know, on a Wednesday, although Parliament is shut. It's on holiday at the moment.
That relies on people watching Question Time. So if you've got it's great, you know, that are the people who are finding Andy Burnham on TikTok then going and watching Question Time later on, or are they just engaging with it on that level?
I meant Prime Minister's Question Time, when they can actually answer each other.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I think I've heard about this quite a bit from the press. So one of the things he hasn't done yet is be interviewed by the press. He's been interviewed, I think, you know, by podcasters and interesting avenues, and the press are really quite upset about this. I saw something on Newsnight about how upset they were that they weren't being able to ask the questions and they weren't being able to cross-examine, back to what you were saying, and by putting yourself just on podcasts or, you know, YouTube channels or whatever, you're not having that kind of robust debate. But I think a lot of people would argue there isn't a lot of robust debate in our press, because our press is so right-leaning that how do you know, there isn't a real centrist newspaper particularly that, you know, like, so there was somebody, I think it was from The Spectator, I think it was, or maybe Daily Mail, you know, saying we need to have access to him so that we can really question. And of course they must and they should, but it's like, yeah, but you're never going to write anything nice about him anyway. So it's kind of like, yes, you can ask those questions, but if you're not going to talk fairly and be fair, then it's not going to work either. So must be quite hard. I think the other thing is he's only just started. When it'll be interesting to see come September, when Parliament is back open, like then what happens, because then he's actually got a lot of work to do, because at the moment they're on, do you know what I mean? So he's got
they're on their jollies, right?
Yeah.
So the other question I kind of had was, and I know you brought up Hannah the plumber and her use of social media and stuff later on, but she does get a lot of pushback for that. Yeah. Do you think we would stand for this kind of content from a female PM? Like, would it get the same coverage where everyone's going, Andy Burnham using TikTok ever so well? He's got so many followers. I mean, obviously there's been a little bit of a do we want this? But do you think if this was a female PM, say Theresa May, do you think if this was her doing it, even if she'd got those followers, do you think we'd end up with like, oh, she just wants to be an influencer, she doesn't want to be, it's not serious?
I think there's a couple of things there. One, definitely we would be, I say we as the world, would be discussing what she looks like a lot more than the content, because we know that. You know, so therefore,
yeah, I mean, that happened anyway. Don't wear the wrong shoes.
Well, exactly. So therefore, she is going to be would be thinking more about her appearance than maybe he is, because she will be scrutinized more. It's really hard to answer that one though, because like, I don't think like there isn't anybody else out there that is using, like, that has used social media. So if Theresa, like, remember when she came out dancing to ABBA? And it was the cringiest moment ever. Like, it would be cringy if she used social media, because it wouldn't feel natural. There's something about him that feels natural on it. Now, has he always been like that? Has he been trained? You know, like, Do you know
This
what I
is
mean?
what I was wondering. Is this like, is he doing a very good impression of authenticity, or is this actual authenticity?
Well, I mean, he might have been trained, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you do have to. It's like I did read somewhere, if you watch politicians when they're speaking, this is a visual, not going to work for podcast. If you're listening, if they put their thumb and their right finger together and they do this, so instead of pointing or flapping
It's
their
to avoid
hand,
pointing, yeah.
it's like they didn't used to do that, but somebody trained them all to do that. Now they all do that. So they all have media training. So but I don't know whether he's always been relaxed in front of the camera, I'd say. So actually, Zach Palazzi is another one. He just feels very relaxed in front of the camera. But he used to do things on stage, didn't he? He was a hypnotist or he was an entertainer. You know, like but has he had training? I kind of feel, if I put my marketing social media hat on, they all need to be trained. They all need to be trained to be able to turn up in online now, because we live in a different world. Gen Z, so the 20-somethings, and then obviously the teenagers that are coming through, they have only ever lived their lives using a phone, a smartphone. So that is how they consume their media. So if important politicians that want to communicate with the world don't embrace it, they are going to be potentially left behind. And I think it's really easy to say that's a bad, like it shouldn't be that important, but it's kind of the world we live in.
Yeah. Well, I do find politics quite interesting, because these are the people that we essentially are trusting to run our lives, run the country, run the world, right?
Yeah.
But it's an institution that's been around for a very long time. Insert historical number here. The Houses of Parliament, very long time. Gosh, should have got a number for that. Didn't realise I was going to end up talking about this. But, and politics then was very particularly, average normal people. You had to be a landowner to even get a vote. So we started, with it essentially being a load of rich people chatting amongst themselves. That was what it was. And then normal people started to get a vote. And that meant that in order to get those votes, they had to be out in their local communities chatting to people. Yeah. Then the media became a thing in kind of the 20th century, and politicians had to start becoming like media savvy and being able to put themselves out to the world on television. And they weren't going to get, if they weren't happy to interact with the media, they weren't going to get a lot of attention. So then that became a thing. And now we've got social media and the whole thing of getting involved. And it's very interesting, the kind of the way it's evolving. And you kind of think, blimey, should there be like a completely different way that we get people to run our country and our world now? Do you know what I mean? Because
I think life is so different, and I think it's really easy for us to complain that the people in charge are out of touch. They've all been to Eton, for example. They don't know what the common person is actually experiencing. Just like Rishi Sunak not actually knowing how to use freaking contactless or put petrol in his car. Like, we don't want that, as in that's what you hear all the time. And then you get somebody that seems to be, and it's not just Andy Burnham, it could be Hannah the plumber, the clues in the name, and they want to show us that we do get it, and we are a bit more normal or a bit more like you or whatever. And one of the best ways in 2026 to communicate that is by being online. Well, I don't think you need a dance, but you need to be able to communicate in a fast synced way. No, definitely no dancing, especially like that. Do you know what I mean? Life, as you've just said, it's evolved. It's not just landowners that vote. We all vote, but the algorithm.
But again, it was landowners who had all the control over what happened to normal people. Are we now in a situation where it's the owners of the social media platforms that have the control over the normal people's lives? Because even if the people have a vote, essentially somebody else is still controlling what they see. Maybe like the peak period of politics was the bit when they had to go around knocking on your doors in your local community to talk to you. Maybe that was peak politics.
Oh yeah,
then.
but that would go in on my moaning, because like the thought of answering the door. In fact, I did answer the door to somebody in the last general election, and then was like, God, like I didn't realise.
Yeah.
But
obviously they do still do that. That's still a big part. The door-to-door canvassing is a big part, but people don't want it anymore. People don't get out of my house. I don't want you
talk to me.
Please don't talk to me in my house. And leaflets and flyers, but obviously those things aren't reaching people. People don't want that. They want to be entertained. So
I don't
anyway,
think it's just, and I think when you say entertained, it's really easy to think it's dancing and being silly, for example. But for example, because I've said about it before, Andy Burnham talking about his favourite albums of all time. That is entertainment, but it also helped me understand who he is as a person. Now, of course, it could be lies, of course, although I do know, I know somebody that worked for him and he does like that music. So, it's not live, but it helped me know who he is. So I think that kind of entertainment, who is the real person behind the facade or the man in the paper or man on the television, I think is really quite interesting. But as we know, it's really easy to hoodwink the audience. I like the word hoodwink. Hoodwink the audience, i.e., I'm a geezer down the pub, but actually I'm incredibly rich and went to a very expensive school. Do you know what I mean?
Who are you talking about?
I don't know, but so it is easy to hoodwink, but I personally would like to know a little bit more about the person and their ethics and their background and I quite like that rather than them being this kind of figure you know nothing about. But then that might just be me.
So let's finish off. If you were Andy Burnham's social media team, what would you make him do? Do you should be doing a get ready with me for PMQs?
No.
What's in my ministerial bag?
Look at you. You've prepared this.
Rate my cabinet outfits? Yeah, no, I'm on
it. He could do all of that. I think carrying on talking about the things that matter to people is the way forward, but he doesn't have to do that in a boring way. He can be jogging with Mo Farah, or he could be getting dressed or leaving the house, but he needs to be talking about the stuff that's important to him and his party and the people. And I think he kind of is doing that right now. But yeah, what's in my ministerial bag? Very good.
Yeah. Should it be like kind of chic to get £2 bus fares?
God, Gemma. He could do that. He could do the WTF is, yeah, I don't know, whatever. But he could do kind of chic. The thing is what he has to do is be fast. If he's going to do trends, he needs to be on it first. Or
so he can't get away with doing what I do, which is wait till everyone's sick of it and then decide I'm going to do it.
No, he cannot do that. But also there's maybe something about answering questions. I think maybe some stories with Ask Me a Question would be good. Polls, using the stickers probably would be good. Starting conversations. As somebody that wasn't prepared, I've come up with that one.
Thought I'd just throw that out there. Okay.
Well, would he, like the eclipses today, I've made a video because I'm wearing my dress with suns on and my sun necklace and my retro colander. So I'm on it. I would be suggesting he would get on it and do that too. So you did actually miss me. I just sang. And in fact, you didn't respond. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk, because that we are talking about. I know, I literally was singing that and you ignored me. But anyway, we are now going to talk.
I was concentrating on important things, like pressing record.
I know.
Not like songs that used to make me cringe and hide in the back of the car when I was a kid when they came on the radio. I'm with my mum and dad.
I'm going to make you cringe now because we're going to talk about sex and libido and women discovering that they can be sexual human beings. And there's been 2 articles recently that have warmed my cockles. Is that actually a phrase?
Warmed my cockles?
Is that a phrase?
Yeah, cockles of your heart. I don't understand why they are cockles, but
we'll move.
It is a phrase, but I don't know why.
I don't know. Sometimes when you say a phrase and then you question it, because it's like, what is that? Anyway, there's been 2 articles about women in their 50s and 60s, like rediscovering their libido. So the Telegraph ran an article about a 64-year-old woman who had her first holiday fling, rekindled feelings I thought were lost forever, she said. She thought she was past her sell-by date. She was single, without children, it said. I don't know why that was relevant. She was postmenopausal. She went to Sicily on holiday and she met a man and had a holiday fling, a real kind of Shirley Valentine, although she didn't move there, like 2 week or, a couple of week fling. And she just rediscovered not only her libido, but feeling seen, feeling visible, feeling wanted. She said, to be seen, desired and adored, even for a few weeks, has restored my self-worth and shored up my flagging midlife ego, which is an amazing story, but also a sad one in a way, because, there are she and millions of other women in their 60s feeling invisible, unloved, and sort of unsexy as well. She said she felt it was scary. She felt uncomfortable to be vulnerable. She set her own boundaries, and it reignited her lost libido. Interestingly, I then went and read the comments, because you know how I love a comment. And all the women, so this is on the Telegraph, all the women were like, go you. That was everything positive. A lot of the men, unfortunately, were like, literally said, quote, made me want to barf. He's obviously a player, i.e. can't be real. He couldn't just have fancied her. She is a narcissistic twerp, were just some of the comments that I read before I gave up. Didn't want to read any more of these comments about this woman. But at the same time, there's been another article in The Guardian about a 56-year-old woman who had an awakening moment watching Richard Ashcroft sing on stage. So the article was called The Moment That Changed Me. So she had lost her libido. Then she saw Richard Ashcroft, who was the singer of The Verve, and it came bursting back. Tequila was involved. She wasn't a fan before. She was just there on a day out. But it kind of led to oh my God, who is this guy? But I don't think it was about him as much, although it did, she said, lead to a new hobby, which was him, like downloading buying his records and stuff. But she said she felt that she'd like a new level of like fandom. It was like a second puberty. It was like her being 12, 13 again and discovering, well, for me, it'd be Duran Duran. She was having that kind of second puberty, and it was what it felt to fancy someone again. And it made her feel alive because her libido was back. Again, lots of really negative bits of feedback, comments from men, particularly about how ridiculous it was. Because of course, I think we've discussed before, following a football team and crying when they win and crying when they lose is passion, but a woman loving a band, whether she's 56 or 13, is obviously obsessive, ridiculous, sad.
But not when men also like a band.
Yeah, no, that's serious. That's very, okay. Very serious.
Serious music business.
So, there's a couple of things to talk about, really. I mean, apart from the fact both stories I think are just wonderful, and I'm really glad they both ended up in the paper. There's a lot of people going, "This isn't news. Why do we care?" But actually, there are millions of women who feel, particularly postmenopausal, so 50s, 60s, just feel invisible. We've talked about this before. Invisible in the workplace, invisible when you're walking down the street and somebody walks into you. But actually, it's about feeling invisible as a woman. We know women lose their libido as part of menopause. It is a common menopause symptom due to no testosterone, because people don't seem to realize that women have testosterone, and that also disappears post-menopause. A lot of women, way too many women, struggle with vaginal atrophy as part of menopause and post-menopause, which means sex itself is incredibly uncomfortable and painful, so therefore they don't want to have sex. But also there's low mood, low confidence. Your body changes. You just don't feel like you again. And yes, HRT can help. Great. Vaginal HRT definitely will help. But I think what these two stories have shown, it's actually about being shown that you're beautiful and sexy and, a woman, and, then that builds on your, confidence grows. And so actually there's a whole thing here about how we are treating women every day in relationships, but also even in the press, the media, I share a lot about how the ageism and, you know, when she's old, she's like past it, but he's a, you know, a great, you know, silver fox, and he's, you know, he's a gentleman or whatever. But this kind of all comes through to everyday life, so that we have now a woman who's watching Richard Ashcroft on stage and just going, oh my God, like I fancy someone. Wow. So yeah, it's about being seen. So did you see these articles, or have you seen, or, you know, what do you feel when you hear about these articles?
I mean, first thought was Shirley Valentine. However, I recently discovered that I am older than Shirley Valentine. So Shirley Valentine wasn't even in her 50s and 60s.
No.
Shirley Valentine was in her early 40s. Her early 40s. She was a spring chicken.
She was just perimenopausal.
Yes. But yeah, I did see the story. I didn't read them in great detail, but I do think they're great. But also the other thing it made me think of was Bridgerton.
Yes, which is
Because there's the story of, I've forgotten her name now.
I don't watch it.
Oh, you should. Bridgerton can be quite spicy. It took me by surprise. I didn't realise. And yeah, so there is an older. She lost her husband. She's the mother of the family, and gradually all her children are getting married off, finding someone for her again, and going through that, sleeping with him for the first time, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of a nice story. But I think it's great. The story, obviously, I think it's a shame that women kind of get to that point where they feel invisible, where they don't feel like they're allowed to be sexy. But I think that we've spoken about before that this is the comments on those articles tell you exactly why. Like, there's so much out there at the moment that basically convinces you. I mean, to be fair, by the time you're 25, they're trying to convince you that you're over the hill and no one will ever love you again if you haven't found someone by then. It's a common thing, isn't it? That, like, you have to be young and gorgeous to be attractive. And it's, well, hopefully one would say not true. But it disappoints me then, the comments from men, deluded. And you see that all the time, again, under social media posts and stuff, with any woman who dares to be like, I mean, I told you a while back, I had them myself. I literally put a post out in which I said my age. I am 46. And suddenly it went a bit outside of my sphere, and I got blokes and they're going, oh, you look about 60. Okay, thanks. Wasn't the point of the post, but also, yay. But that idea, that aging automatically equals unattractive is so ingrained in our society that even people who are a bit like, yes, okay, yeah, I'm 60, I am my age, kind of almost associate that with, so I'm unattractive, but I'm fine with it, rather than to be able to go, do you know what? Maybe I want to feel attractive today.
Yeah, I think
that was a bit of a random rant, but But
no, I've written down here they were both are age appropriate. So both those stories, she didn't go to a concert. I'm trying to think of where the singer was 20 and fell in love with him. He's Richard Ashcroft. I don't know how old Richard Ashcroft is, but he's got to be older than me. I'm 54. Well, maybe a similar age when the Verve came out. You know what I mean? So it was age appropriate. The woman in
54.
In Sicily, it was with a man a similar age. So I think there's something really age appropriate about this. So, which I think is great. And it then makes me think there's this whole, when you were younger and you thought of a 50-year-old having sex, so it would have been your parents or something, you'd be like, and, if you think of somebody in their 80s, you might go, ooh. But actually, we are all beings that may like to have sex. Not everybody, but you know what I mean? And I think there is this kind of, I think there's probably some reaction from younger people, potentially going, 60-year-old having a fling, I don't want to hear about it. It's just grim. Why? This is not news. Ugh. But actually, just wait till you're 60, mate. I'm sure you're going to want to be having sex too.
Is it then? But there's that link, isn't there? Sex and fertility as well, of course. Whereas it's fine for men to keep having sex into their 60s or 70s, 80s. Hugh Hefner, I'm looking at you. Because technically they can still produce, I'm not looking at him, he's dead, produce children. But women reach a point where they're past their sell-by date for that, because they can't have children anymore. And therefore, why would they be doing this just because it's nice?
Yeah. And I think that then comes back to the whole conversation about women being sexual beings, because so many people, and obviously historically they have, but from what I read online, I feel it's still there, around our worth is linked to our ability to have children. And we should, like you read articles, if a woman gets pregnant unplanned, you always see people saying, well, she should have closed her legs, for example. Well, A, she didn't have to, and B, but there was another person involved. It's almost like we should only have sex to have babies. Or our worth is linked to our ability to have babies. And obviously unfortunately, I'm still seeing that rhetoric online right now, which is slightly concerning.
Well, it's on the rise, if anything. There's a bit of it, but yeah.
Yeah. And then, so actually a woman at age 64 wanting to have sex, it's almost like, I can't compute. Why? Why does she want to have sex? But a man at 64 is totally like, well, of course he does. He's a man. And actually, you would have a comment, when you'd see comments going, well, he's a man. Of course he wants to have sex. He's going to want to have sex till the day I die. But, well, a woman might want to do that too, It's not unheard of.
It's a knitting to do.
It's 2026. I do find sometimes, and I probably could say this in every podcast, it's 2026 for crying out loud. But this is what I love about these two articles, because it's actually women saying, it's reignited my libido. And I'm really happy about that. And there are people quite clearly that can't compute in the comments.
Yeah. I see. One of the things that I quite like is, as kind of our generation, slightly older and slightly younger, as we're getting older, it means that we're kind of the first people aging and being able to see other people our age presenting themselves online.
Yes.
Rather than what a media, which has essentially been male controlled forever and still mostly, rather than that. I mean, when we know the algorithm as well doesn't necessarily, but there is more chance that we will find and see a wider range of examples of women our own age and older that we can see online and are visible, especially if we have the urge to go and look for it, hunt it out, despite what the algorithm wants us to see, which is all 25-year-olds wearing beige. Kind of, that we can see, and we can see women aging in a range of ways. We can see women single and thriving in their 60s, or we can see women in forming new relationships in their 60s, or we can see women in healthy relationships in their 60s, or starting again in their 60s. We can see all of the range of the human experience. Is more accessible to us and not just presented through the lens of those terrible magazines like Take a Break and stuff that we used to get in the break room at whatever shop you used to work in for your Saturday job.
I think you
know what I mean.
Yeah, we're the first generation, though, to really, as you said, present that online, but also to be shouting about it. Whereas the generation above us didn't. It doesn't mean they weren't doing the stuff. They weren't falling in love with a guy on stage, or they weren't having a holiday fling, but it wasn't visible. So it's all quite new, I suppose, visibly new, which is why people are like it. Whereas I think women in this demographic are like going, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, go woman, like, that's amazing. Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, we talk about, representation matters, and representation matters for like race and sexuality and everything as well. But again, so often that is focused on younger people as well. So I think it's really good, and it's really important that representation matters for age and gender as well as sexuality and race. And these things are all intersectional, obviously, it's not just that you want to see, 60-year-old white men because they were always out there, It's just really good to be able to see that representation a little bit more, and for people to know that there's a range of ways that they can live their life, because people have always been living their lives in this range of ways. But I think that there are people who may not have made a choice that they wanted to make on the basis that they didn't have anyone else that they could see living their life in that way. And I think it can be really really helpful for people to see that, to see kind of, that living their best life, having a fling. It's, oh, is that okay? Can I do that? That's all right then. Kind of, I can have a fling.
I know, and they make a point.
Off to Greece I go.
Yeah. They make a point of saying she was single and child-free, which is really interesting that they added.
Well, that was interesting, because single, fine, because, flitting off to Greece and having a fling when you're married is having an affair. Different. That's a whole different thing.
But child-free, it's like, or I don't know. I'm sure it said didn't have children. So it's almost like, but if she did have children,
don't embarrass the children because you're a mother now.
Mother now. And the thing is you're 64, so they're probably like, I don't know, at uni or, you know what I mean? Maybe in their 20s, maybe even older. But you can't go and have a fling because your role is a mother. So I thought that was really interesting. But it was in the Telegraph. So that's just, a little
fair
bit.
enough, yeah.
I think, exactly as you said, that's part of the reason why I loved these articles. I want women to realise that 64 is not young. Not young. Wow, re-edit. 64 is not old, and you've got years ahead of you, and you should be able to do what you want, and that includes going and having a fling and having sex and finding people attractive and feeling like a sexual being. Because again, I think we've mentioned before in did I do it on here? I feel like I did, like sex education at school. Like there's no talk about, like, for example, pleasuring yourself for girls. There wasn't when my kids did sex education. It was not talked about, but it was for boys. So you've been brought up from a very young age that, pleasure and sex don't go together if you're a woman, but that's rubbish. So I think it's great that these articles are out there, and the guy's going, she's a narcissistic woman or whatever they said for sharing her story, and it's like, no, this is really good. We need more stories like this. We need more television programs as well with it on. Like, we need more of this.
Absolutely. So who are your celebrity crushes?
I think we all know that my Roman Empire is Simon Neil, the lead singer of Biffy Clyro. He is my Roman Empire, and it is age appropriate. Josh Homme. I did see a really interesting article, and I did flag it up to maybe talk about separately, because he's got really buff and he's like 60 or 59 and he's looking the best he's ever looked. But of course he's grey, so he's a silver fox, and it's really interesting. There's all these articles, I'm seeing it a lot. And and the truth is he does look amazing, but I've never seen an article about a woman who was turning 60 that looked great, that got an article that said, aren't they amazing?
Not that aren't they amazing? I mean, didn't Carol Vorderman got a lot of stick?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
We get the articles, but we don't get the positive. I'll save that one for another day. But Josh Homme, yeah. So I do have a couple. What about you?
Mine, I'm sorry, I like terribly basic at the moment, because I like Pedro Pascal.
Yes, Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal and Pedro Pascal's arms can live in my head. If that's kind of a given. Again, he is age appropriate. He's my age. So he is age appropriate. I don't know. I tend to flit around as well. What's really funny, I had a bit of a thing for when Daniel Craig's first Bond film came out years ago. I had a bit of a thing for Daniel Craig, but then I thought I had a bit of a thing for Daniel Craig, and I watched some other films with Daniel Craig in, and I was like,
the one where he's like the Poirot-y one. It's not Poirot.
Yeah. That's more recent. Yeah. It turns out it was Daniel Craig's Bond. Though actually, I do quite like him. But it was Daniel Craig's Bond that I liked specifically. That I had a bit of a okay, that's fine. And my husband thinks he's the best Bond as well. That sounds like that might be controversial.
I don't know. I haven't. I don't think I've watched him in a Bond film. Sorry.
Have you not?
No.
What have you been doing with your life, Kate?
I'm not really into James Bond, I'm afraid. I like the old ones.
Yeah, no, but you have to watch them anyway.
No, you don't have to.
No, you do.
No, we do have free will, Jem.
You do, because otherwise, how can you have an opinion on who's the best Bond?
Well, true. So we do have some crushes, age-appropriate crushes, though. It's worth
I'm sorry.
saying.
Did I digress?
I did see an article also about how Pedro Pascal was aging very well. I feel like there's a lot of articles about men aging very well and less about women, but that's another topic.
Another story. See, Pedro Pascal, the first time I saw Pedro Pascal, he was in Buffy, and he was, I did not think, he is not cute at all. And I mean, that was 30 years ago? 26? Yeah, 25, 30 years ago. But yeah, so he has he has aged into his looks. So, but I think a lot of people do, and I genuinely think a lot of women do as well. And these that are always like, oh my God, look, this woman's got older, just get on my nerves, because I often think a lot of women look a lot better as they get older. I think I look better now than I did when I was 17. I was a mess.
Wait till you see the photo I'm sharing tomorrow of me at 17, and you'll know that I look better now because I have hair on my head and it's not bright orange like Mohican. But yeah. So to wrap this up then, women in their 60s are allowed to have sex and to feel sexy. And
consider that permission from us.
Yeah. Go out. Go to Sicily. Find a man if that's what you want. And if not, I don't know, stay indoors and keep away from people that walk badly in the street.
Yes. Or get one of those little, don't you get those sex toy things that just do little puffs of air?
Sex toy. Tell me more. We've got 4 minutes. What are you talking about?
I really know what they do, but Instagram advertises them to me all the time.
To you, your algorithm. You've obviously looked at it because the algorithm they've never showed me.
I think they're like suction, like sex toys that do little suction.
Or they suction rather than blowing out air.
I think. Well, I presume. Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming they blow a little bit if they. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, next time
maybe I should do some more research.
Next time you see it, I was going to say, share it with me, but don't, because then my whole feed will be full of it. It sounds intriguing, but I think maybe on that note, we'll wrap it up.
Watch this space. Find out more next week.
Thank you for joining us for another roundup of midlife chat, hot takes, and occasional moaning. Well, quite a bit of moaning.
Make sure you hit subscribe so your podcast app gently nudges you every Friday, because honestly, who remembers anything without a reminder these days? And also, we like people liking us because we're very needy.
And if you fancy being extra lovely, leave us a rating or a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and make sure you find time for yourself. You deserve it.